Welcome to Bigfoot
and the Bunny.
This is a couple's journey into the mysterious,
the unknown, and the paranormal.
I'm your host, Chris Carr.
And I'm your host, Kristen Johnson.
Together we are Bigfoot and the Bunny.
Right on. We are Bigfoot and the Bunny, and I don't know if for you guys, but our intros seem to be sticking, so I don't know if there's something going on in the interwebs. Hopefully not. Do let us. Yeah, could be solar winds striking the Earth at this point, as they have been doing a lot lately.
Mm-hmm.
But let us know in the chat if things
Please.
get bad, and we'll try to troubleshoot it on the fly. We got a great show for you. I did want to mention it is hot in New England. And when I say hot, it's 80 degrees, but in our studio, it feels like 105.
It probably is.
And that's
So
because we
sweating.
use heavy materials to sound dampen us, because this room has a natural echo that's actually pretty pronounced, and we tried to do it the right way, but we're sweating because of it. So if we look like we just ran down or around a corner,
It's bad.
and back, you know why. We got that going on. Also, a very cool thing was in the news this week about the black hole that is in the center of our solar system. NASA has been able to reproduce the sounds of it. Apparently they've had to, what they call sonifications on it to make it within our realm of hearing. But I'm going to share a screen with you, and I want you guys to hear this, because it's kind of crazy. It's it sounds like the sounds you would imagine hell sounding like, with all the lost souls. So let me share this. And we'll go over here. Here we go.
Reminds me of a Tool song.
Yeah, right. It's an introduction to something a little nefarious. And I'm just going to read from the page real quick. This is from nasa.gov. It says, since 2003, the black hole at the center of the Perseus galaxy cluster has been associated with sound. This is because astronomers have discovered that pressure waves sent out by the black hole caused ripples in the cluster's hot gas that could be translated into a note, one that humans cannot hear, some 57 octaves above middle C, which would be within human hearing frequencies. Now, a new sonification brings more notes to this black hole sound machine. The new sonification, that is, the translation of the astronomical data into sound, is being released for NASA's Black Hole Week this year, and you got to hear a little of that. So I thought that was a little strange. Hey, I see Greg Koss out there.
Hello there.
How are you doing, my friend? Greg was on our show Thursday, and I was watching his show last night. Shadow Hunters is awesome. A great guest and great show. Hey, Courtney, good to see you. We're gonna tell you about our guest here. If I can get all my notes up on the screen. Let's see. All right, we're gonna bring him right on. His name is Wes Roberts, and he's a 30-year contract college professor. Wes Roberts had hints of alien visitations dating back to his teens, though ofttimes frustrating nighttime experiences. Through those experiences, then because of a consciously recalled experience in the 1980s, Wes eventually became convinced his experience could not be explained away by conventional theories. And he's going to tell us about that. Let me bring him right on. Hey there, Wes. How are you?
Hello there, Chris. Hi, Kristen.
Hi. Welcome.
Hello again. Happy Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on our humble show. As I understand it, you're pretty good friends and colleagues with a former guest that we've had on the show before.
I believe so. When I eventually decided to seek hypnotherapy, which is kind of a story in itself. My first contact didn't pan out, but that contact introduced me to Leslie Mitchell Clark.
That's
and
right.
I think that was around the time she was starting her practice. So I was probably one of her first of these kinds of clients.
Excellent. And she was a wonderful guest. And if you guys are interested, you can look into the archives of wherever you're watching the show and find our interview with Leslie. We had a great time talking to her. But you're here today. We wanted to find out, how did this all come about? If we want to go back in the time machine and see how you became aware of these experiences, if you weren't initially, and the impact they've had on you.
Well, thank you for asking that. I wasn't aware initially, that is for sure. Growing up in my teens and 20s and 30s, yes, I've been involved in many interesting things, parapsychology being one of them, magic being another one, and all sorts of other ones. But this did not occur to me, despite my ongoing interest in UFOs and the possibility that we're connected, pardon me, to alien visitors. That was about all I thought of it. In the 90s or so, I was hooked up with MUFON, Mutual UFO Network at one point, and I was introduced to some folks that claimed they were alien abductees. And all I had at that point was wonder. And I just quite honestly felt a little creeped out being around some of them. The energy emanating from them was unusual, and I'm really sensitive to energy. So that was my overall introduction to it. But in the late 1980s, I had an experience I consciously remembered, and I'd like to set the record straight. Probably other guests of yours have done this, but I didn't need to be hypnotized to remember several of my experiences. A lot of them were consciously recalled. And that continues to this day, not as often, but it still continues to this day. So I had an experience in the 80s. I was living with a different partner at the time. And I had a really weird 5-step or 5-phase experience that in and of itself wasn't frightening, I don't think. I've had others that were, but this one was not. And I woke up in the morning under the most unusual circumstances. I was watching the digital clock. And you know how the minutes are supposed to tick by in minute increments, but they weren't. While I was sitting up in bed awake, the minutes were ticking by in second intervals to me. And I must have still been in a different phase or state of mind.
Wow.
So I went into the other room, Chris, and got some scrap paper and wrote the experience down. And I mean, for over 20 years, I never decided to pursue it because I didn't know what it was. And I would not have called myself an abductee until over 20 years later.
That's fascinating. And of course, that plays into like time-lapse phenomena.
Yes.
Was that a digital or analog clock?
It was.
Digital. All right, sorry. So the minutes were just going by like seconds on the digital clock.
Boom, boom, boom on the digital clock.
Okay.
I later found out, and this is just extra evidence, my partner who I was living with at the time had been, to use the term, shut off, rendered unable to do anything but hear. And apparently there were 2 such experiences. I've still not uncovered the details of the second one. But she told me she had really felt odd that something had taken place that night, that she could hear some voices. All I remembered was the series of events I went through that I wrote down.
Oh, that's fascinating.
I mean, when you say render, do you mean like, was she paralyzed? And
yeah, she was catatonic, pretty much. She could hear but couldn't move. As far as I know, she couldn't see anything but her immediate surroundings. This happened twice. The second time, she was paralyzed, to use the term, and could hear me talking with someone in the other room. I have yet to uncover what that experience is, and I've tried.
Oh, wow.
Now, were you and your partner? Were you like in a sleep state? Had you just woken up, or what was the layout for that, or were you just middle of the day kind of thing?
It was sleep state. It was overnight. Chris, a lot of these experiences, you transition into them, or I have, through sleep, because we're real susceptible. We're real vulnerable. We're real accessible when we're sleeping. And so that's useful or not, depending on your position in life. For me, it wasn't too useful, but it was useful for them. So this all happened while I was asleep. And
It does seem like that hypnagogic state right between sleep and wake states is where that vulnerability is. And that things like sleep paralysis happen. And with that can be a whole range of phenomena from abduction experiences to things like old hag syndrome.
Yeah, I agree completely. So I was open and apparently not just available, but suitable for this kind of thing, I guess I would say.
Yes, Anne Marie Young says old hag. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah,
She wished it,
we've
but-
talked about that on our show a few times, but we've also noticed with our guests that have had the abduction phenomena occur to them, that it's often in those states of transitioning consciousness. You know, I'd like to remind our listeners that, you know, our consciousness is a tough thing to define when we're asleep. You know, it can shift, and for all intents and purposes, it is our reality when we're dreaming and that sort of thing. Unless we're well aware that we're dreaming, we become awake in that state. It is as real as anything, you know, that we experience when we're not sleeping.
Same brain, same memories.
Right.
People tend to think that it's, well, that must be a different brain, or it's not part of your real brain. That is not true at all. It's part of your recollection, as you would recall this conversation we're having.
Exactly.
Oh, we totally agree with you.
Mm-hmm. So how did you get into the regression?
So for approximately 20 years, I tried to explain this by all conventional means I know. And I'm no expert, but I know about dreaming. I know about lucid dreaming. I know about out-of-body experiences. I know about hallucination. I know about visions. So I ran that through all those filters, and it wasn't any of them as far as I could tell. But it wasn't nagging me enough to do anything about it until it was. And at around the 20-year point, I wouldn't say getting unstable, but as a college teacher, you know, you've got to perform. You've got to be really organized. You've got to be able to wrangle students, to use an expression. And
Sure.
I felt it was affecting my job. I was getting uptight, anxious, nervous. And I guess around that time, I shared it with a couple of others who weren't as close to me as, let's say, family or a lover might be. I began to share it a little bit.
Oh,
Oh, and it appears to have dropped, folks. So
just give us a minute.
we will stand by while Wes rejoins.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So this is really fascinating, and I want to talk about his childhood a little bit more.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I see him rejoining,
Mm-hmm.
because I wonder if that maybe led into the phenomena a little bit. Welcome back.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say the stream disappeared, so I
Yeah,
apologize.
you dropped a little mysteriously, and we had a little trouble with our intro. We noticed it's ticking, so
Yeah.
we don't know if there's something going on. We're hardwired into our internet here, and it's usually quite stable, but of course we occasionally get gremlins, and then sometimes they're a little nefarious. So we'll just have to keep an eye on it. I was just mentioning that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your childhood experiences, maybe prior to the experiences you had in the 80s or before that. You mentioned an interest in magic, which is something that we share as well. In fact, before I got into any kind of paranormal stuff, I was much more into magic growing up and fascinated with it at an early age. But we both had very haunted childhoods, Kristen as well. So I wonder if that happened to you. Did you have any paranormal experiences or alien-like experiences when you were a child that you remember?
I would say I did, and this is a bit of a retrospective because I didn't classify them that way at the time. But looking back, yeah, I'm sure I did. I began to have spontaneous out-of-the-body experiences when I was around 15, and I didn't know what they were. And I thought the first one, I thought I'm going to die. Sorry, but that's what it felt like. It was terrifying.
They can be
And
scary.
Mm.
Yes.
oh my gosh, I was really afraid. And these continued to happen off and on through my teens, 15, 16, 17. And eventually I finally found Robert Monroe and the work he did.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I'm sure your viewers are aware, you two are aware, but we can go into that if you want. That
Oh,
Monroe,
absolutely.
Yes,
I
please.
love Robert Monroe's story. We love Hemisync and being a pioneer
Yeah.
in out of body experiences. Our listeners today may not be aware, so feel free, please.
well, I had discovered Robert Monroe at one point much later, and he talked about his out of body experiences, how they were spontaneous, how they were frightening, how he was on the verge of being committed to a mental institution, if my understanding is correct. And then finally ran into either a psychologist or a psychiatrist who said, "You're not going crazy. These are real experiences." And so Monroe, who invented a technology, a sound technology, because he was an engineer, he invented a technology that put dissonant signals in both your ears, so slightly different frequencies in both your ears. When you listen to that, your brain is supposed to harmonize or synchronize the two signals. And so hemisync, the long form, is hemispheric synchronization.
Yes, that's
So
right.
your brain synchronizes the signals, and apparently that can lead to all sorts of altered states. And Monroe took great advantage of that once he got over his fear and figured out what they were, and wrote several books about his journeys, for instance, in the afterlife. So
Yeah.
eventually I found out about that, but I didn't know what it was at the time. I just thought it was terrifying.
Yes, that
Yeah.
is completely terrifying,
I
though.
know for
especially being
myself,
at the age.
I'm sorry, baby. Trying to do these things, like I say, in middle school, I was very fascinated with astral projection, and I had a hypnosis tape and cassette because I go back a ways as well. And I would play my cassette and would put me in a trance state. It wasn't hemisync, but it was like a guided meditation. And some of those experiences, you just would get this sense that there was something in the other room or down the hall that was just so evil and would scare the crap out of you. And you'd snap back into your body. Although I have to say, I had a better grasp of these out of body experiences then than I do now. Now they're very hard for me to do, but we're actually both working on them. Yeah, because I feel like that phenomena is totally related to the alien abduction phenomena as well as paranormal. It gives you some insight. This idea of traveling or time, just makes no sense in the astral world. You can be anywhere at any place just by imagining it, willing it. And I think the same is true of the entities that we're encountering.
I think so too. And looking back at that period of my life, and I began to get interested in magic, so I took steps to become a warlock, quote unquote. Come a long way since there. Anyway, around that time, I had an experience with three cloaked or beings. Cloaked, is that the right way to say? They had robes on, three robed beings. And I was only to find out in the last 6 months or so, this is not uncommon. Only in the last 6 months or so have I found that out. But
Wow.
I was awake. I was totally awake, sitting up in bed. I was around 17 years old. And I saw in my doorway three robed beings, black robed beings at different heights. I couldn't see their faces clearly. And they were basically outstretching their arms, saying, "Come with us," although they never spoke. And it was like, "I'm not coming with you." Absolutely not. I'm not going. But I only found out recently I'm not the only abductee or experiencer to have seen three robed beings.
Interesting. I haven't heard about the robe beings before. So were they like black robes, or are they dark and just kind of spooky
Dark,
as I'm imagining right now?
It was creepy, nightmare creepy. But it passed. But it evidently didn't totally pass, because if they were aspects of what I was going to encounter in later life, that evidently they got their hooks into me somehow.
What did you think they wanted?
So I had a very primal experience, if I try and think back of that, which was mostly fear-based. I thought they wanted to take me away. I did not know what that meant. And though I had some physical abductions over my life, especially in my childhood, they turned into more, how would I say, spirit abductions, which is quite common. I think it's a lot easier for aliens to take your spirit, your etheric self, than it is to take your physical body. But I thought they wanted to take me away, and I didn't understand what that meant, except that I was not interested.
Right. A lot of people theorize that they want to steal your consciousness or your soul, to use an older term, right? Which can be one and the same in a lot of ways. Some people like to break those apart, but I kind of think of all of that as one thing, the thing that makes us human, that perceives everything that's going on, whatever physical state we might be in. There may be some value in it.
Well, I love how the two of you are connecting the dots. Probably this is what you always do. But I think the dots need to be connected, between things like spiritualism, which I have an active interest in, life after death, out-of-body experiences, remote viewing, which I do a little of and have training in. All these things, there's like a lot of dots that connect and may lead to the same outcomes.
Yes, we definitely agree. Same thing with us, remote viewing. And
yeah. And why I asked you about your childhood is because almost all our guests that, are interested in these sorts of things that you just detailed had some sort of childhood experience. And it's almost like we spend the rest of our lives trying to figure out why that happened. Did it really happen? When you prove it happens, you need to know the hows and whys, wows and how. What do you call it?
I call it the highs and wows.
The highs and wows.
Yeah.
Right. That particular
moment one time. So
it was an accident, but it pertains to things like they used to say psychedelics. An abduction phenomena now is a kind of a big thing that's rising, and as a way of contacting you, through the veil, if you will.
I agree with all that too, and I think the about the whys and whereofs or wherefores or whatever that statement is. I think a lot of people turn the opportunity down, quite honestly, although it may not sound like an opportunity to the two of you or your viewers or your listeners, but I think a lot of people turn it down. I think they have a nanosecond experience at times, very brief, and they say, no, hell no. And they move on with their lives. Yeah.
Yes.
I think so, Kristen. I think they're afraid.
Yes. He had to drag me into this kicking and screaming. So yes.
That's right. That's right. She didn't want anything to do with the phenomena.
True story.
From her childhood experiences, because they were that threatening and disruptive to her life. They were scary, and mine was scary as well. But for whatever reason, I found it attractive, and I was very drawn to magic. So that warlock moniker, I've used it myself in the past.
That's why I kind of giggled.
Yeah, I hear you. And I felt like it was a time in my life where I felt like the stuff wasn't real, and maybe I had outgrown it, and then I was showed that it was real later. And I had the proof, and then I had to know all over again. And then we got into paranormal things, and I drug Kristen in, and we have no doubt that the phenomena exists, and no doubt our guests, when they tell us these stories about their abduction experiences or ghosts, whatever it is, there's more than meets the eye, right?
Agreed. Yeah, I found that throughout my life, and I've never turned my back on it. I shared some of my experiences with a friend recently, and I got an interesting reaction I didn't expect. She thought some of my abductions, even the mild ones, and most of them are positive, I need to emphasize, most of my experiences have been positive. But she thought some of them, even the positive ones, were a grave violation. And
can you, if you want to?
Yeah, I think I can. A violation like an assault.
Oh, okay, that's where I thought you were going with that, because we asked that question a lot.
Yeah, we hear the stories. And one of the fascinating points is like why people go back. We can talk about things like Whitley Strieber and, read or watch Communion and go, well, all that happened to you. Why would you want anything to do with it still?
Yes.
But there's something to that. How has that been for you?
I I've followed some of the people you've mentioned, others like Bud Hopkins, John Mack, some of the serious researchers, and I've always been fascinated. But is there a dark side to this? Yeah, a handful of my incidents have been dark. Some I've never spoken about or shared them fully with anyone, quite honestly, in any way, including in my books. But the darker ones involved emotions, emotions of fear, emotions of helplessness, emotions of being manipulated. And I don't know about the two of you, but I had to come to a point in my life, and I came to this point, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, maybe a little longer, to where I could reconcile all of this, where I could say it was okay, where I could say it was integrated in my life and I could do something with it, not stand in awe or fear of it, but even talk about it, share my experiences, hope that others will take a little baby step on whatever road they're on.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's wonderful that you're sharing your experiences because, like you said, a lot of people probably do have some sort of experience, but put it out of their head, or they don't want to deal with it, or they fear it so much that they won't accept it or come to grips with it. And I think that's good. I was going to go in a direction and I lost it. I'm sorry. But when you say, I do know what I was going to say. I'm sorry. Okay. So some of the experiences that you're telling of and others are positive. Some are negative. Some people feel like people are sort of like a herd, and that their reason for their intervening in our lives in some way would be the same way, like say veterinarian might interfere with the herd of antelope and check the herd and make sure they were able to reproduce and they were healthy and able to sustain themselves. Do you get that impression at all?
I do. Although I would like to say, I guess I will say, I feel this is where I came from. This is who I am. If that's not human, that's fine with me. I'm okay with that. I think we're not from here, quite honestly. And that there's so many races, as the two of you would know. It's speculated there are 70 to 80 that we know about, and probably a lot
82.
more. See?
Right.
Yeah,
It depends on the book you read, right?
Sure.
We have a book
it's true.
82 in there, in that particular.
And that our respective governments actively work with 8 to 10 of them or something, depending on who you read or who you speak to. My view today is that I've been involved maybe with 2, possibly 3 races. The main one I'm involved with, which could be called the Pleiadians, or perhaps the Tall Whites, might be another name for them, perhaps the Nordics, I'm not sure. They're positive, uplifting. They understand the journey I'm on. They're trying to tutor me to do better at the things I do. They try to assure me, and I've looked back at my transcripts, they've tried to assure me that they're always here. And I don't know if you've had other guests on who have had my little problem being that I can't just call them up when I want to and say, can you sit on the couch and we'll have a conversation? I can never do that.
Yeah, I think it's a rare thing, although, if you were to believe everything you read, it's not that rare to conjure a UFO or alien being. I don't think is that easy. There have been examples of it. We got a great book over here, actually.
Yes, we do.
One, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this book. This is by Jeffrey Mishlove, and it's called The PK Man, and he was researching a gentleman named Ted Owens, who's no longer with us, in that book. And he did have the ability, and he proved this to like local press and lots of people to apparently conjure UFOs in like the 70s and 80s. And it's a fascinating, really good book. I'd recommend people check that out if you're looking for a good read aside of your books.
That's right.
Which I want to mention real quick, and we will mention again. Intersections, A True Story of Extraterrestrial Contact, and The Experiencer's Garden.
Thank you.
so you had these things, these phenomena. You wonder if they're going to continue. Do you feel like they're going to continue your entire life? Do you where do you see this going?
So actually, Chris, they do not stop, at least in my life. They're not as common as they used to be, but probably once a month I'll have something. I'll get up in the morning and say, this has all the hallmarks of an ET experience. So it's different. It's not a dream. It's not an illusion. So they still occur. They're not necessarily as profound as they used to be, but they are still there. When I got my first hypnosis session, I had not realized this was going on in my childhood. This was the weirdest thing for me, right? My first hypnosis session, I was trying to explore what happened in the 1980s. That did not occur in my first or second session. What did occur were experiences of myself as a little boy. And when I came out of my first session with Leslie, I remember with tears in my eyes saying, "Is this for real?" Because one of my fears was that I would go to hypnotherapy and find out I made it all up. Right. And I know that might be the common take. I don't know what the common take on this is. I don't know if there is one, but my fear was that I was making it up.
I'm sure it's mixed. Everybody wonders, and we haven't done it, so I don't think we're in a good place to comment personally. But I suppose the public has a mixed experience. And now we're familiar with John Mack, Harvard professor that pioneered a lot of this work, and Bud Hopkins. They certainly, were smart people. So I don't think they were doing it for giggles, right? They had to be seeing some real data coming back, and people were remembering experiences that were brought about through this. So when you have a session with Leslie, say, and you have this regression hypnosis done on you, are you awake the whole time, and she's easing your mental state into relaxation? And how does it feel and work? What's the experience like?
So speaking from my perspective, it's my understanding there are at least 5 levels of hypnosis, and you're touching the theta states of the brain. If you go to the last level, you're asleep, you're unconscious. So I don't go to that level, or she doesn't take me to that level. We go to the 4th level commonly when we've done this in the past. You are totally cognizant of everything that's going on. You might be a little groggy. Your actions and your speech might be a bit slurred. This is what I've noticed with me. But you can answer direct questions, and you can explore direct scenarios. And I would like to point out that there may still be a misconception that somebody that does hypnosis leads you.
I was going to say that after you finished, I was going to go along with that question and say, some people felt led, and they do.
We're on the same wavelength, Kristen, right?
Yes.
So I've never been led, and I want to say never and quantify never. Over 5 years, I did 35 sessions with her.
Wow.
So, and I've never felt led. In fact, the general scenario for me has been that I find myself in a hallway with doors that all look the same, left and right, going down the hallway. I am simply directed to choose a door and open it. And then I start talking about what I perceive, what I see or hear or feel. And then Leslie, in this case, might ask me a question like, are these beings you see tall or short? Are there other people there? What are you wearing? Some things to try and ground the time to a certain time in your life or to a time period, and to ground you as the subject. So I've always been able to report on what I've seen, what I felt. Maybe 3 times of the 35, I was afraid. And I said, I can't do this. And so you would be taken out to 3rd-person perspective and look at it like a movie, so you're not involved. You're never asked to relive an event, just to comment on it, generally speaking. And so that's the way most of them went until we got to a point which we thought, well, I wonder if we can communicate in real time, kind of like channeling, with one of the beings. And we did that for maybe 10 sessions. It was fascinating.
Wow. And some questions and comments from the audience I want to bring up real fast before I get too far behind.
Yeah.
Nina had said, my brother and I always refer to orbs as flying. It was natural as a child and a teen. Why is it more difficult as an adult?
So I would say to your viewers something interesting that piques my interest. I've seen orbs for about 25 years with my naked eye. And they just started one day. Then I got fascinated in orbs and started looking at orb books and what they might be. I think if it's difficult now, it's because we're more informed and more intelligent, and we're dead curious about what they are or represent. We might not have had that degree of direction or intelligence when we were younger. When I see orbs, I have this little thing I go through because they never last for me. They last for 1 second, maybe 2 seconds, and they just fly across my vision. And I always try and reach out, quite honestly. I always try and reach out. Okay, thank you, you got my attention. Who or what are you? What do you want? And the prevailing thought is that an orb is a spirit in the form of an orb.
Okay, and that would tie back to things like fairies and Taipaiwankas, even.
That's what they're called, the Wampanoags.
The Wampanoags is a local Native American indigenous tribe here. Refer to them as Taipaiwankas, but every culture has them. The Irish call them fairies, that kind of thing. Do you think there's a correlation there when you see these? Are they like lights? Can you describe what the orbs look like?
Yeah, they're like balls of light, approximately half an inch to an inch in diameter. They are rarely 3D for me. They're usually 2D. Generally speaking, I can tell if they're in an area, and I can walk to the area and somebody can take a photograph of me, and they're more than not likely to show up. In fact, I've had one show up on my shoulder.
Oh, that's neat.
What I would say to you and to Nina, if she's interested, is imagine for a moment that you could replay the experience and elongate the time. There's probably a lot of information in there that you could still get from the experience, that you could still reveal, like unpacking.
Like if you could slow it down.
Yes, and I think you can.
When you have that experience, do you feel anything like, I hate using these labels, clairsentient, but do you...
Psychically?
Yes. Do you feel anything?
Any
some
impression?
of them?
So I do sometimes. I feel nervous sometimes. And I think nervousness is just the messenger. I don't think it's the message. So I think I get nervous because it's like a flag saying you're having an experience. And it's got to impact some part of my apparatus, whatever that is, whoever I am. And so I get a little nervous or a little anxious. And then sometimes I just get mad and say, what do you want?
That's what I've done all my life. So yeah.
It gets me nowhere.
No, it doesn't. Please leave me alone. I'm busy. I'm backing me, something like that. But yeah.
I think orbs are fascinating because in the paranormal world, they were considered like a bad word in a way because of the prevalence of them with the advent of digital photography, where dust shows up in water droplets and that sort of thing in digital photographs, and clearly debunkable things. But in ufology, they're much more embraced. Do the orbs have any kind of color to them when you see them? Are they always white, or does it vary?
They do. There's about 4 primary colors I always see. Light blue is the most prevalent one for me. Then white, periodically red, and very rarely black. And I had an experience about 2 years ago, and this is only the second time.
Oh dear.
When it looks like our signal is fading in and out. Do you still have?
Yeah, I think we started to lose you, but you're
good?
back.
We're good.
I'm being an orb right now.
You're revealing too much information.
That's what it is. That seems to happen on our show.
It's orbs.
So I had an outdoor experience where I saw a black one, and it followed me down the street.
Come on.
It was just the weirdest thing. But here's an interesting thought for both of you and for Nina and your audience, is that they're drawn to happy, festive places often, whether that's a garden, a wedding, a banquet hall, a discotheque, if there's such a thing, a club. They're drawn to these frequently. When my ex and I used to go to Oktoberfest up here, we take photos and had photos of hundreds of orbs, always.
My goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
almost like a high emotional area. And actually,
Yes.
that reminds me of this comment here by our friend Greg Koss.
Yes.
We were talking Thursday, I think, about haunted taverns, right? It was
Yes.
Thursday. Being why there's so many of them. And then maybe it's the emotions that are captured in these, where people are, joyous or just wildly swinging emotions that go with the drinking and festivities. Greg says, I saw and felt that energy you just talked about. And this is going back a little bit in our conversation. Chris and Kristen, look how far you have come.
The
Light
kicking and screaming. That's what he's
yeah, light and
referring
peace.
to.
That's
Yes.
right.
Thank
That's right.
you, Greg. Yes, I have come far. I still am afraid a little bit, but
Greg had a question as well. He asked how the doors are identified. So was that part of the hypnosis session? You told there are doors around and your mind starts to see them, that sort of thing?
None of the doors have any remarkable markings. They all look the same. I intuitively choose, I don't want to say the right one. I intuitively choose a door that will lead me to an experience I've had.
okay.
So none of them are marked. And that's, to me, part of the beauty and part of the credibility.
Sure,
of,
absolutely.
hypnosis.
That's
Nina says my brother and I still see orbs.
that's
So
awesome.
Me too.
very,
I
very
do
interesting.
too, and I had to giggle because you were talking about music, and my house is constantly, my son's on right now, my 14-year-old, constant music all the time, and they just, my cats pick them up before, sometimes before I do. My cats are really good at just, oh yeah, I see it too. Okay, yeah,
Cats are great little ghost hunters, if you will.
yeah,
They do seem to have
little investigators.
extra abilities, be sensitive to things.
Yeah.
I was going to say, well, music triggers also a release of chemicals in one's brain, that helps bring about that joy. And maybe that's part of it too. Emotions do.
The endorphin.
There's all sorts of things going on
dopamine.
chemically that change in a person's body, physical body, that maybe is something that can draw something like, I'm going to use the word alien. I don't know what else to use here.
ET.
Consciousness. How about that?
Interdimensional.
Disembodied consciousness.
Yes.
I agree with that. I think that's very appropriate. I think that some of the orbs that visit me are probes, quite honestly. Maybe not the alien beings themselves, but something that's capable of probing
Sentient.
for them.
Like, is it sentient?
Yes.
Like a sentient being,
Yeah, sentient.
but like
so
a
that,
drone type thing, like you said.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
but I really do believe that you can unpack an orb event, or any event. Actually, that's part of magic for me, is being able to not so much replay, but expand it.
So do you think they have a message when they're going by? You're saying
Yeah.
there's more to that experience
Are we still there?
of a zipping orb in front of you. If we could slow it down and walk through the steps, what would that orb experience look like?
He's lost us.
Are we back?
We can hear you. Can you? I'm guessing you can hear us.
Hello.
Oh yeah, we're revealing too much. I'm telling you, it's a conspiracy.
It doesn't.
That they don't want this information out there. This is good information. We're getting into some very fascinating subjects here.
Absolutely. Sorry, I keep going over your questions, but I think of something and I'm like, phew, had a lot of coffee.
I'm not sure. Maybe you need to rejoin. You can drop and rejoin if you can hear us. There it goes.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, this is a fascinating discussion. I hope our audience can see why we like to discuss these kind of things, because it relates so much to a lot of the phenomena that goes into the paranormal. These worlds, are building bridges between each other right in front of our eyes, especially in the last decade or so. Let's see. Can you hear us now?
I can, yeah. We blipped out, so I started closing apps on my computer. It's a brand new laptop. You never know. So I started closing apps.
No
Yeah.
worries. No worries.
We
You know,
understand that exactly. That's what's
I
going on.
alluded that we might be giving out too much information again
Yeah.
because we might be. I don't know. I think we're hitting on some really good subjects. The last thing I had asked you is if you were to take that orb experience, and you're saying that there's more information there than we see, that time, our physical time just moves too fast to take it all in. Slow it down. What is that experience like as you perceive it?
I think it's like having foreground and background details that don't have to do directly with the orb. For instance, what did it just go through? What kind of world is it from? If it's emotional, what kind of emotion is it carrying today? What does it think of you? What does it have planned for later? In other words, I think a lot of peripheral information, not directly related to the appearance, is in there. And that if we could unpack it, we'd unpack a larger picture.
Do you think there's a message? And what would that
I
message
do. I do think there are messages in there. My own messages would be, I'm trying to think of one of my doctors said to me earlier this week about a minor treatment I'm having. He said, stay the course. And I felt like saying, well, that's profound, which it wasn't.
Right.
But I think that's the kind of message I've got. Stay the course, and you're on task. You're doing what you need to do, and you're helping people. That's the impression I get.
Oh, that's good. That's how we feel about synchronicities in our lives.
Absolutely.
And I know that was mentioned in the show Hellier, and which we liked really because they started with the definition of synchronicity, and we were seeing in our own lives and trying to relate that to our own experiences. When you're within a lot of synchronicities and things are just flowing, you feel like you're on a good course.
Yeah, I think you hit your plateaus, Chris. I think you hit plateaus. And when you do, wow, a whole world of information is unveiled to you, giving you the ability to get to the next plateau.
Absolutely.
Yep. Everything's connected.
What is your impression of all the UAP phenomena that has been coming out in the news in the last few years, and the Tic Tacs and gimlets and all that? Yeah. Sorry.
I think I think this is not accidental disclosure. I'm not going to say I hang with a lot of people that are involved in disclosure, but I have associates and friends that are involved in the disclosure movement. Mm-hmm. And your audience, I don't know as much about it as I should, but there have been 2 major conferences on disclosure, stuff that Dr. Greer and others have been involved in. And they've pushed our respective governments year after year, decade after decade, to tell us what they know. And so I think the UAPs and things was just the tip of the iceberg as they're kind of prepping us, in my opinion. I can't imagine the world fleeing around with their arms up in panic to hear that there are UFOs. I just can't picture it anymore. But I think this is not accidental disclosure, quite honestly. Just a little piece of it, piece at a time.
Right. Leak it, a little leak. Right. Bits and pieces.
To see how people will react, because people don't react the way you necessarily think they would anyways.
So we were talking about this the other day. We were talking about, well, look what the hell COVID did to everybody. They think it's going to bring like
hoarding toilet paper and things of that.
All the nations together of the world. And I'm like, that is not what happened at all. Hoarding toilet paper.
Yeah.
And food. I mean, it's
of course,
so you don't know really.
The dynamics at the time, I mean, people became even more divided. And, I didn't see a unification between countries, certainly, or peoples of the world. Yep. And you have to wonder. I don't know. Have you witnessed any phenomena that would resemble the sort of video that has been given out to the public?
I think.
There you go.
Your audio's back.
I'm back.
Yes. Your video's a little frozen, but your audio's running.
We can hear you.
I imagine you can't hear us.
Good Lord, what is
I
that?
can't hear. I missed part of your sentence, Chris. I just typed in the chat that you were breaking up. Are you hearing me? Okay.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
We're hearing you now. It does come and go. But I was asking you if you had experienced any of that sort of UAP phenomena that our audience and the public in general might be familiar with that has been released through this slow disclosure.
So I experienced very little in terms of seeing any UAP or UFO directly, maybe twice in my life. I found myself on board craft, but generally speaking, I don't see them. I've looked at some of the footage. I've talked to the folks at MUFON Canada who have analyzed some of the footage. And they've analyzed some other footage that I don't think is publicly available. And we're talking about something that can move across the screen at 8,000 miles an hour.
Right.
You know, something that they had to slow down 100 times just to get it in the frames. So this is not something we're capable of doing. This is not, unless they're really good at hiding that, and I don't believe it. Also, the stuff apparently that we make, that we construct, is still can show nuts and bolts and fissures and joints.
Yes.
And my understanding is that the real alien craft, are not like that. So I have a good friend up here who we call him a UFO magnet. He has hundreds of hours of video footage and thousands of photos of UFOs that fly over where he works.
Wow.
Wow.
He just walks outside for a break. You know, Leslie and I just chuckled. I was like, what is it with this guy? He'll walk out for a break and there's stuff up there. And it's like, are you kidding me? So we call him a UFO magnet. Eventually, I tried to convince him he's probably an ambassador and didn't know it. But he's camera shy.
Interesting. I would love to see some of those photos. Maybe offline we could share some, because I'm just curious.
Yeah.
What do the UAP phenomena look like in the photos that seem to?
So they suffer the usual issues with being a gazillion miles away. Most of them, they're pretty far away, and they're high velocity. Most of them, but he's got some that show definite shapes, triangles, for instance, mothership shapes, for instance. And he's also, and I can contact him if you like on your behalf, and ask him if he would make those available. I'd be happy to do that. It's a point of consternation for him, I think. He's been called by.
Yeah. Thank you. That would be nice, but
we
don't
appreciate
want to.
it. But we would understand if he didn't want to share
that,
as well, of course. And we wouldn't necessarily share them or reveal them on the show or anything like that. I'm just curious.
No, I'd be happy to.
People like Gary Nolan have theorized that they might be projections. He told a story in a different podcast, a popular one that was pretty fascinating, caught my ear, where these children had taken a picture up through like the sunroof of their car. They had one of those cars where the whole roof is pretty much glass, like a Tesla. I didn't identify it, but they saw a craft above their car while they were driving in the back seat, and they took a picture of it, and the craft wasn't there. There seemed to be this little thing much higher up, and it was as if it had possibly projected the craft to appear to the humans in the craft. I guess the parents may have saw it as well, be right above the car. And it was actually some sort of holographic thing going on, which makes me wonder about that crazy speed. If you take like a laser pointer and you play with your cat, you can make some pretty fast speeds. Maybe we're the cats, right?
Exactly.
Maybe it's created to look like it's moving that fast, but doesn't actually contain anything. I don't know. It's only speculation.
I think it's solid speculation. My speculation is that they simply do time slips. They seem to simply appear and disappear, which to me indicates space-time warping. I don't know enough about quantum mechanics or physics to answer that, but apparently that's a very good explanation to some about how they simply appear.
Right. And this would have to be things that move faster than the speed of light, or Einstein would say.
We talk a lot about string theory.
Yeah, dimensional things,
Yes.
right? String theory defines 11 different dimensions. And once you go over from 5 on, we're talking
Yeah.
about time manipulation and that the ability to change timelines and have simultaneous timelines, which I find extremely fascinating.
Yeah.
And, just based on some of the dream
And
experiences.
your video and sound are going out there, Chris. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I hope it isn't for our audience. Hey, guys out there in the audience, let us know how our sound is, if it is one or the other of us, if you hear us going in and out.
Please.
We'd appreciate it. I see another comment out here from
It
Nina.
was real jumpy.
Yeah. I often hear two terms, outer dimensional beings and interdimensional beings. Is there a difference, or are they appearing in two different ways? One being physical and one being spiritual? That's a good question.
Yes, very good.
I think maybe in those other dimensions, I don't know if we could say it was anything but spiritual, because we don't really understand how consciousness exists in them.
Thank you, Greg.
Greg says we're all fine. Thank you, Greg.
Natalie.
All right, sound is fine here. So yeah, I think it is on Wes's side.
Yeah.
He's having some internet issues, so we'll try again. If you can hear us at all, Wes, please try to drop and rejoin again, and we'll try to cover a few more things and probably wrap things up. And it's such a fascinating subject, right? So the timeline stuff, and I think in the fifth dimension, it's considered that your timeline, if you were thinking of a line going, say, in a linear fashion, right, moving left to right, could split, and then you would have the ability to go back to that one split where you kind of went like a branch on a tree. And then as you grow in these dimensions, you hit the sixth and the seventh, you can jump between them, and you don't necessarily need to go where they went like a tree branch and went in two different directions. And that's fascinating.
I was hemi-syncing one night. I haven't told anybody this yet. And I did it for a little while, a couple of days, and then I stopped. I stopped for one day, and the next night I dreamt that I was in 3 different timelines in my one dream. It would be 4, because this would be, that's why we're really looking into this. And
exactly. Yeah, we've had
I've
some
never
really
had a dream
strange
that
dream
I know of
experiences
before
using
like that, but it was
the hemi-sync that seemed to indicate we were living in different dimensions. And we're going to try this again. Can you hear us okay now, Wes?
I can. Yeah, I was doing everything possible here to get back to you. I don't know what's happening.
I saw you pop up in the middle of a sentence. And, no problem. We understand. Sometimes the interwebs just do not cooperate. And we'll do the best we can and move forward, and just see how it goes, because we did want to talk about your books, and
sure.
we can expect.
Please, before something happens again.
Yeah. You've got 2 books out. We've got them there in our ticker. Intersections, a true story of extraterrestrial contact. And also the other book is An Experiencer's Garden. Fascinating name there. What are these books like? What do you cover in them?
So in the first book, I went over a handful of the experiences I knew about, a handful of hypnosis sessions, and tried to come to terms with them, including putting anecdotal footnotes in there suggesting this is what I think was happening. But in the first book, Leslie, she co-wrote it with me and commented from her perspective on what she felt was going on. And I thought it was a unique blend. I certainly haven't seen it before, but it was, I guess, an introduction to folks that were interested in some of the key experiences that have shaped my life, and to Leslie's commentary as a hypnotherapist on those experiences. And after I got through that, I thought, and I don't know how you two feel about writing, but I thought, I am not going through this process again. And of course, I did go through it again. And I didn't expect I would.
Understandable.
And birth the new baby. And that
yeah.
would be your second book, An Experiencer's Garden, which I love the title of that.
I think that we're living in a really unique garden, all of us, and we're just exploring. And this isn't religious overtones coming from me. It's just the way I feel. It's a garden of exploration, and I wonder sometimes how lucid we actually are in the waking world. And so that's part of why I decided to explore more of my experiences. I went through more transcripts and more recordings because I thought, well, maybe I have 30 or 25 distinct experiences. And it turns out I have more like 75 distinct experiences or something. So the
Wow.
second book was an attempt to categorize them. I don't know if it's going to be successful or not, but to say, well, this box is places I've gone to on a craft, and this box included people. And that box included someone I call my twin, who's an alien I'm connected to. And the other box included these emotions. So it was my attempt to talk about all that and to say near the end, this is why I think this happened. And it's a question I certainly get a lot. Why you? Why me?
We were touching on dimensions when we lost you the last time, and talking about timelines. And this brings about like multiverse theories that we might be existing in other places simultaneously. We've both had dreams that were like vivid dreams where it felt the distinct notion when we woke was that we had been in another timeline. I remember thinking this. We were both doing a lot of hemisync at the time, by the way, which is fascinating how that plays into it. And I had this idea, and Kristen had the same feeling as well, that wasn't just a dream. That was really happening. It's just in a different timeline. And do you think that's a possibility, or have you had any experiences that may relate to timelines or multiverse?
I strongly feel that it's a reality. Leslie and I had on our little show a few years ago a guest who's no longer alive that talked about the secrets of the multiverse. And so I thought, well, that's interesting. Why not? Multiple universes in different times, maybe. And then another author spoke about the omniverse. And so my understanding of the difference of the two is the multiverse is pretty physical, or can be physical, refers to physical or other universes. The omniverse packages in the spirit worlds. And so interestingly that you mentioned that, I'm really passionate about it. My partner and I have been talking about for the last 2 years, maybe longer, that we have several other selves out there in space-time, not necessarily like us, not necessarily in this time frame, who inform us and let's say enhance our skill set and our abilities just as we do for them. And we tried an ad hoc experiment one day just out on the balcony here, just trying to imagine, this is a Robert Monroe thing, imagine, if you will, two of our counterparts sitting somewhere else, imagining us. And it was pretty exciting because after a couple of minutes, we started to feel that we were losing ground with the reality around us. We never pursued it fully, but we actually had some really deep moving experiences that had we pursued it, we might have lost track of who and what we were for a brief time.
Wow, fascinating. So did you go into sort of a meditative state? Were you trying to astral project, or
not trying to astral project, just accepting that there are many other Wes's, or my partner Anna's. There are many other Anna's out there who contribute to who and what we are, which could answer a number of things if you look at your own life.
Absolutely.
How do I know some of the stuff I know?
Right.
Sure. Deja vu.
Yeah. So it was a casual experience, Chris. It was just casual, and we thought we've got to work on this. We've got to apply what we know. We're both magicians. We've got to apply what we know, and make it a kind of a ceremony, or you could call it a magical working or a magical ritual, and actually do it more deliberately and see what happens.
So you really just set an intention and went into sort of a meditative state, with the idea that there is another you out there trying to talk to you, just, in another timeline or dimension, thinking the exact same thing you were. And that's great. That's a cool experiment. I think we should try that.
Yeah,
We were shocked at how well it turned out.
Wow. So, yeah, I think you're right in that there is more to us. There may be multiple versions of us out there living these entirely different lives. And that was the impression that we got from those dreams we were describing. Kristen went through 4 different timelines. I had one where I just woke up and I'm looking at my wall, and it's not my wall, but I'm feeling conscious. It's a different color. There is something on the wall that isn't on my wall. It's this weird vent kind of thing. And when I went to the next level of awareness, it was my wall, but I was sitting laying in the exact position, staring at the wall. So it wasn't like I was rolled over and had to go look at it. It was too strange. And while that may not sound like much, the feeling I got from it was that I was absolutely in another timeline looking at that wall, and it just happens to be the same me in the same position viewing things. And very fascinating thing that occurred with that. Some comments on our audience. Natalie says, I would imagine you would need a strong sense of the center of your being if you started splitting into or contacting other dimensions.
That's a really good comment. If I were to allow the liberty of rephrasing it, perhaps Natalie's saying, do I have to be grounded? And the answer is positively yes. Positively yes. I have to feel pretty grounded and comfortable in who and what I am, understanding that a myriad of other beings may contribute to who and what I am, and not to lose sense of self during the experiences. It's just like when I'm hypnotized, I never lose sense of self. I do not lose control. I can end the experience if I needed to end it. And so being grounded and not allowing myself to say, oh yeah, just take over. I never do that. That's something I never do. And most of my experiences with alien life forms have been a lot like that. I've become aware at some point. I was in the experience. I called them out, so to speak, and they kicked me out. They kicked me out of the experience. So,
wow.
So I think I'm grounded enough to do that. I would highly recommend baby steps in a process like this. I consider this to be part and parcel what we can do as magical beings, what we can do if we're careful. And the first step is simply acknowledging this is possible or true.
It has to be a belief, right?
I believe it does, yeah.
I think so too, at least on some level. People who tend to debunk things, not that they can't have an experience, they can, but if you don't believe in the phenomena, it seems less likely that they'll ever see it or have the experience. There's another comment out here from Nina. Nina says, some believe our spirit is divided, therefore easier to protect from just one outcome. So maybe the many parts make up a whole that forms a sort of shield of maintaining the one true consciousness or collective consciousness that we might be.
This branches out so greatly, Kristen and Nina, to things like group souls. And those theories have been posited for an awful long time. Also on the belief part of it, Monroe said, and this is also said in remote viewing training, start with the belief and then move to knowing. From belief to knowing.
Yes.
Prove it for yourself. And you can do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's been our experience as well.
Yep.
When we see it actually happen, it was like more things followed because we had a definite, little doubt in our mind that we were experiencing true phenomena. And for us, it's more paranormal related, if you will. But again, these things are related.
We call it what? Phenomenology?
We don't. Steve Merritt does.
Steve Merritt does. Yeah.
He coined that term, and I think it's a great term. He says, you have your ufology, you have hauntology, would be the paranormal. He said, why not call it phenomenology? And I think that's a great point because it is all related.
Everything.
Similar phenomena.
As Ian said it, we're all connected. She said soul tribe.
Soul tribe, yes. Anne-Marie.
Yeah, tribe, yeah.
Yes. And it is. And, you wonder if you are, living this life and having these experiences with people in your family that you knew in other lifetimes and that sort of thing. Do you get a sense of that? that the people and relationships you make in this life are ones that may be very old?
I do at times. And as correlated to this, I think, is that abductions and UFO and alien experiences generally tend to run in the family. I'm sure you've heard that before. And so I think that's true of one of my nieces who revealed to me one day something odd that happened to her. I said, really? And I didn't want to pursue it too far with her, but it just had the call signs of an alien experience. And so I do feel that way sometimes. And I don't know if the two of you went down the road with Leslie about Intra-Life Regression or no?
Oh, I'm not sure. It's been a while. I think it was over a year ago we talked to Leslie. But we can touch on the, maybe it'll come back to us.
Sure. Intra-life hypnosis regression is your life between lives, in short. You get to visit your soul or spirit before it chooses to come back, before it chooses to incarnate. And in doing that, you might get answers to why you're here or where you're going. So among the many sessions I had with Leslie, I did one inner life regression. And to me, it just confirmed why me, because I chose. I was presented with a choice. And I chose at some point in this life, if I could, to wake up, to become conscious of the fact that I did choose, to become conscious of the fact that I'm not a victim. So an intra-life regression is a fascinating piece of hypnosis because you're taken backwards in time, then forward, and then there you are. And in my case, and I don't think it's unusual, you get to sit in on or to observe a council that you have cooperated with to come to this decision about your next incarnation. And plans have been laid, things like that. And then poof, you're here. And of course, we forget all about it.
I know a lot of NDEs or near-death experiencers that we've talked to. I have mentioned things like they see this fact that people choose, their souls or consciousness chooses the life that they lead. They choose to be the baby and that sort of thing, which I think is interesting. So you get that sort of sense that there's this in-between time, and you're choosing the family of souls, say, to be with, your soul tribe, as Anne-Marie put it.
I do, truly. I don't know how the two of you feel about that exactly, but I've run into people that I figured I've met in spirit, and I'm finally getting to meet them in person.
I don't doubt it. It's just next level for us. I haven't had the experience of being able to have any sense of like we might do that, but I've heard enough people talk about it that I think there might be some validity there.
Oh my gosh, it happened with my partner. I dreamt about someone like her until I met her.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Excellent. Greg said, can it just be open to suggestion, which is like being the led, like you mentioned earlier, being led into maybe some of the experience in the hypnosis. But you said you never felt led.
I never felt led because there was no preconception. To use a remote viewing experience, there was no front loading in most of the experiences, no suggestions about, let's go look at this. The only times that happened, I was fully aware, like, let's go back and visit my 1980s experience, please. Or let's try and channel this alien being, please. So that was agreed upon by both parties. Most of the time, like the very first time I was hypnotized, I had no friggin' idea of what would be uncovered. No idea. And when it all came down, the first and second experiences, I thought, this is stuff I could never have conceived of. And then at some point, Leslie said science had caught up, or some parts of science had caught up, and said that we weren't accessing any creative parts of our brain. We were accessing memory.
Oh, wow.
It's
and I accept that.
And when you say front loading and remote viewing, so our audience knows, that would be where you're getting any kind of details about a target ahead of time. Like even the fact that it's a missing person or something. If you know this, you might start putting together a story in your mind, or, my cat's lost. Can you find my cat is kind of front loading because you're going to imagine all the experiences a cat has, or, it's underwater or in the woods, or any other kind of details would be called front loading, because at that point your brain will start to put together a story and you're being led by your own mind.
Thank you, Chris, for clarifying that, which I did not clarify.
Oh, no worries. We like the remote viewing, and we like talking about it on the show. Nina also mentions walk-ins. And I guess this would be spirits that just kind of walk in, or aliens.
I don't know about you, but I call them wanderers. They just come and wander right in wherever we are. So, but you have different, I believe they're all different beings, but they are all connected. What do you call them? Like the walk-ins?
I tend to agree with you, Kristen, that they're different beings that are connected. I certainly don't have any issue with that. I don't think they're from one race or species. They could even be potentially people that are alive right now. We tend to think of being visited by people from the afterlife and the spirit world. That's not always 100% the case. A living person can bilocate. Certainly their spirit could bilocate. So I've been involved probably with 3 races, but I've known others that have been involved with many, and none of them pleasant in some cases. So I think a walk-in needs some kind of access unless they have a real superpower. I don't think this comes automatically for us or possibly for others. It's simply, well, I've gone over the Rainbow Bridge and now I'm Superman. I don't think that's true.
I think that's great. And I love that you mentioned bilocation,
Mm-hmm.
to be in 2 places at the same time. This is something science has seen with electrons on a quantum level, and called that bilocation, where an electron can be in 2 places at the same time. Very hard to wrap your minds around it, but yet it happens there. And if it can happen on a quantum level, perhaps it happens on a larger level. Nina goes on to say her mother is a walk-in, and I'm assuming that she's passed on and not just,
Biolocating?
stopping by without knocking.
Good. Well, that's
Greg says, I felt the same way, Wes, and I have met quite a few people I felt I've known. Nina goes on.
I can attest to that.
Took over someone else's. So she saw her mother in someone else. Oh, no, she says she's alive. Okay, she is alive.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so it is this bilocational phenomena that you're referring to. Thank you. Greg says, as long as you are open to beings of love and light. And then how do you feel about that? That's a good point, Greg. Thank you. That brings me to self-protection. As some of the phenomena that, and even in your own experiences, has not always been, excuse me, wonderful, right? So there's been some negative experiences to go along with neutral and positive ones. Do you do anything to protect yourself? You mentioned you're a magician as well. Are there steps you take to protect yourself against beings that would have nefarious intent?
I think I take all sorts of steps, quite honestly, but my favorite one is simply to reinforce, kind of like a Robert Monroe personal energy balloon, a bubble that surrounds not just our body, but our body and spirit. And it is inviolate unless I choose to let someone in. And what goes out, the same thing, unless I choose to let something out of it. So I probably formulated this like decades ago. And then I guess I get a smack of, I don't know if I want to call it snobbishness or elitism, thinking that it's in play. It's in place. It's automatic pilot. And so you can picture it as a sphere of protection. You can certainly do a little ceremony around that and reinforce it. And generally speaking, things cannot get in there unless I want them to. What if they do get in there? Because I'm not a super being. Then I have to encounter them and deal with it and process it. So far, I've come out the other side of those encounters. I've come out wiser. I don't know if I've come out stronger, but I've come out thinking, okay, obviously I was too limited in the way I constructed my little magical bubble. And I've got to push that understanding beyond anything I currently know, because I don't know what kinds of forces can try and get in. I have to define them from my own standpoint in life. But you can actually do a little ceremony to help activate this magical sphere that surrounds you, and probably you're going to be more healthy after doing it.
Most definitely.
Robert Monroe talks about a balloon in the Gateway series, making a balloon of protection around you. And it sounds a little similar to that. And I heard other people talk about similar things, putting this spear about them. What about things like herbs or crystals, things of that nature? Does any of that, do you find any of that helpful, or do you think it just depends on the person?
I think it does depend on the person. Chris, like I was asked recently if I have any magical items, artifacts. And it's like, yeah, a ton of them. At one point, I would have either taken deliberate steps to infuse them with something, or they had that already. But what I would say, if you want to take this to one level further, they are props. And I don't believe you need them.
Same page.
Yeah,
Well,
We were on the same page.
we have quite a few items behind us, and
We do.
we subscribe to the idea of panpsychism, and that is to say that any kind of matter can maintain a consciousness. So they're not necessarily haunted objects, but they might be at times.
Which plays into
agreed. They're all very special to me. I have charged them myself, or somebody who's gifted them to me has charged them, and I accept them for what they are, and periodically pull them out and use them. But normally, to me, it's like the paranormal. Do you need a prop to read someone's mind or to be clairvoyant? I don't believe you do.
Right. Or have an experience.
Right.
When we talk about ideas of protection, certainly in the paranormal stage, and different things come up a lot.
Palo
Santo,
candles, different.
Sure. We have oils
magic.
we do like, and
We have voodoo. We're eclectic.
Voodoo, mostly.
Very eclectic.
Yeah,
We are
eclectic. But I think a lot of it is more our intentions, or playing out a psychodrama of our minds to bring about belief in the powers of those objects. Not that the objects can't maintain a consciousness of their own, though, or hold energy. It does seem wholly possible.
Absolutely.
But you don't hear those things referenced with ufology too much. So I was wondering what your take was on it.
They say something about orgon. Isn't orgon?
Oregon, yeah.
Organite. I heard something about that it's supposed to keep the ETs away. Is that something you've heard of? Or anybody?
I'm not sure I'm familiar with that. Maybe one of your viewers is. I'm not sure I am.
Yeah, I've heard of that before. I don't know how true it is. I was just asking. I don't know. But Greg Koss said, very nice, Wes. He says, and I do the same before and after. Yep.
Yeah.
Shields himself. Yeah, we were just talking about that the other night. Yep.
Excellent. I noticed that something in your bio I wanted to bring up real quick too. And you might have touched on this a little bit, but it mentions a pressing question, an important question that you've faced most of your life, and that being, why me? And do you think there was a reason why you specifically were chosen to have these experiences? Oh, I'm not sure if you can hear us. Can you hear us? I can see you.
And are you still there?
Yeah, we are here.
You've cut out. I'm sorry to say.
Nope, we're here. Let me send you a private message. Yep. Hopefully that'll come across. We're here. Yeah, or
All I heard, Chris, was why me? I'm sorry I didn't.
Of course he did.
No, can you hear me now? Nope, it's going to drop and come back.
I feel bad for him. I think this is a great interview.
Yeah.
He's a great guy, great guy.
Absolutely. That's too bad. But he'll be back. We'll talk a little bit more.
Yeah, and then we'll just, because it's probably getting aggravated with it.
I hear him, I think.
I'm hearing a little of your conversation.
There you
two
are.
of you.
Yes,
Yeah.
can you hear us now? We can hear you back again.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, sorry, you were broken up. I thought you were getting to the question that I'm trying to tackle. Why me? Was that it?
Yeah,
Yes.
there was an important question for you that you had faced most of your life, and that was being why me? And did you feel like there was a reason why you were chosen? Or just
So
one?
part of that, I think, was at my behest, my doing, not in this lifetime, but in another. And the other part, and I'm not sure about this, but Leslie raised it with me, and it makes sense. If you have some psychic capability or ability, you are like a beam shining up into the air that others can notice. You are like a magnet.
I agree.
And I knew I was psychic when I was young. I'm not the most talented person in the world, but I can do a few things. And Leslie speculates that attracted them to me.
That's a good speculation. I think that a lot of people are, or if you're tapped into it, you're more likely to have certain experiences than people who aren't. Certainly.
Mm-hmm. Most
So you
definitely.
think the reason that you've had all these experiences, these alien type experiences in particular, is that you're a sort of beacon for them?
I think so in part, and I think they, if they're able to probe us in some way, not the ugly way, but psychically.
Yeah.
That always comes up, though.
Never been through it, thank goodness. But I think if they're able to probe us, they can see if we're a good candidate. Are we a good candidate? Can we take this forward? Not just can we absorb it and integrate it into our own lives, but can we do something in terms of broadcasting it to others? And I've also said yes repeatedly.
This kind of reminds me, I should say, of the disclosure that we were talking about earlier. And perhaps in picking individuals that are more receptive to
Yes.
seeing the phenomena, being able to spread the word, or be compelled to tell others about their experiences. Isn't that the slow form of disclosure that we're seeing with the government, with the UAP phenomena that's been videotaped?
Oh, most likely. Most likely. You know, a skeptic is going to cry about never seeing a ghost because he never wants to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Until it happens.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I understand. I mean, we come from that, like, we do try to debunk things, and we do
Sure.
come from a skeptical place, we'll say, but in the end, most of it ends up.
Well, that's right. Not everything is a ghost, certainly.
Right.
And
No.
I think pareidolia is a real thing, and that sort of
You wrote the book on it. So.
thing. Yeah. So what is it? Why do you feel compelled to share your message? Do you think it's important for people to know this information?
I think, Chris, that there are more of us, quite honestly. And I'm glad you two talked about being skeptical. I am too. I don't, everything that goes bump in the night isn't a ghost or UFO. I never think that.
Right.
So I selectively get rid of those and try and talk about the ones I feel do not fall into that category, that are real. But I think I'm here to make people aware that they're not alone. That if they have the tiniest inkling they've been through something, the chances are it's possible they have. And I want to tell them, you can not just survive it, but come out the other end having integrated it and still be strong and still be stable and still do what you do in life.
It's true.
Exactly.
So I'm glad that
certainly
we'll end up getting them. We always do.
A lot of people probably do repress some of that phenomena, either from a traumatic PTSD or PSTD. That is not post-traumatic PTSD. Thank you.
I have that.
PTSD.
Experience, or perhaps just a fear of not being accepted by society. I think it's great to share the message for those reasons.
Yes.
Your website is Wes G Roberts. Is that right? .com.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that because this will eventually become a podcast and some people will listen to this. Wes G Roberts, as you would imagine it is spelled, .com. You can also be found at on Facebook, facebook.com, Wes G Roberts. Are those the best places to reach you?
Oh gosh, yeah. My website's always under development. What's new, right, in this world? Um, but I am developing a series of workshops that are hopefully coming around the summer, and people can read about them there. And I'm
Excellent.
trying to upload things like this show, meaning to say I was there, I was with Chris and Kristen. So I keep trying to update it. So that's the best way, really, for sure.
That's great. We're going to check out your.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the workshops you have
the
coming
workshops.
Oh, sure. In talking to some other folks, they thought it would be valuable for me to say, well, how did you get from A to Z? How did you get to the point of integration? And it didn't just happen overnight. I went through a series of steps, some of them meditative, some of them guided journeys, some of them involving hypnosis, some of them just facing my fears. So I went through a series of steps to get to the point where I would accept this was possible in my life. It wasn't automatically, hey, I want to write a book and be on TV. I don't want to be on TV, actually. So it wasn't this kind of thing. It was like, I want to tell people how they can take a baby step. And from that baby step, start to work forward to saying, this is a thing. This isn't so unnatural that it's just happened to you. It's happened to others before you. Here are like 5 things that you can do that might help you get to the point of integrating this in your life and then moving forward. So tools, links, resources, guest speaker or 2. I want to tell people that you can do this if you need to.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
Excellent.
completely fascinating. I imagine there will be something to behold. We'll definitely keep us posted on those, and we'll spread the word
please.
as well. I think that's great. That's wonderful that you're doing that. Anne-Marie Young mentioned shadow work. Does shadow work play a role in your acceptance of the experiences that you have?
I guess I would need your viewers, Anne-Marie's, is it, definition?
Anne-Marie Young, yes. Of what shadow work is. I think she's referring to like Carl Jung's shadow work, which is to look at the self, the dark self, maybe not, but the part of you that is you that you don't always want to be, that sort of thing.
Okay, then I would say yes. I remember going through a real frustrating period because the 2 of you and some of your viewers understand how magic can work. Some magicians like myself tend to believe that I dictate my life. And so it was shocking to find out that's not fully true or wholly true, that I am not totally in charge of my destiny, not totally in charge of my will or my fate. Sure. And so I did have to examine some of those parts of me and said, is that okay? Can I move forward with conceding that that's okay? And I was able to look at those places and say yes. And in fact, to further comment on what she said, I am constantly going through like the Akashic records as a living human being. This isn't supposed to happen yet. but I've been going through this for about a year or so. So I'm being compelled to look at some of the darker parts of me right now.
Wow.
That's a great answer.
Yes.
And interesting, the Akashic records, of course, are supposed to be a record of everything kept somewhere. Now, do you visualize the Akashic records as like a physical resource, or is it something you touch within meditative states and just through like a visualization?
That's a really hard question. I'm going to say it's the journal of my soul through life to this point. And the way I'm reviewing these things is I, for whatever reason, remember an incident when I was 15 or when I was 27, when I wasn't nice. And okay, you got to relive that now. Oh, great. Thanks for that. I thought I could wait for a while, but it's not happening. So I think it's a signature journal of one's spirit or one's soul. So I don't know where it's etched. I don't think it's etched physically anywhere.
Yes, a lot of people reference it, and certainly I know in my own path work I've done with magic and other magicians, a lot of times the magic that you're doing is about the self more than anything. It's like self-improvement, which I think is a misconception by other people, that people get into magic to manipulate others. where I always felt it was a lot about manipulating oneself to have, the predictable good life, perhaps that you mentioned that we don't always have control of. Would you agree?
I would agree totally. It's like the operator in alchemy. Magic's aimed at the operator, not about making gold.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it's a common misconception that, well, as soon as I get into magic, I'm going to pull up my hit list, and then I'm going to pull up my list of expensive cars I want, and then all the other people I want in my life will pull out that list. So mostly the list I mostly pull out is fix yourself list.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I find the reactionary magicians, if you will, those that are always into it when they're mad at somebody,
yeah, Joe,
are not the best magicians. But not that you necessarily want to cross them, but I don't think they're,
yeah,
it's true. Oh, there was one other thing I wanted to touch on that you mentioned earlier. Speaking of magic and say witchcraft in the Wicca community, generational witchcraft is kind of a big thing, right? And was it at one point when, say, it was peaking in the 60s with people like Sanders and whatnot. A lot of people talked about generational Wicca and people that were born into certain families. That reminded me a little of something you said earlier, where there may be some genetic tie into experiencers.
Yes.
Do you think there's a correlation there?
I think that there may be. I quite honestly say I'm not finished, never finished exploring. I'm still just a work in progress. But my family background, genetic family background, my grandmother read tea leaves, for instance, and always cautioned me about getting involved in magic. When I started to enter that phase in my teens, which has never ended, she said, "Don't do that. It's the devil's work and all that." Well, I was only finding out much, much later, I think after she died, that when she was reading tea leaves, she would sometimes predict somebody's death, and so she gave it up.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a big responsibility.
We've asked people about how do they subtly go about that, the psychics.
Exactly. When you get that kind of information, like what do you do with it? Do you tell the person and that sort of thing?
Yeah.
The ethics of being psychic.
Certainly. Anne-Marie Young says balance is always going back on my list to work on. Right.
Understandable, Anne.
Definitely. Well, it's a journey, right? Life is a journey, and beyond life apparently is a journey as well. And we look forward to talking to you some more, Wes.
Yes, please.
This has been great.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. It's been
I'm very, very interested in your books, actually.
Yes, we are.
I would like to read the Garden Experiences Garden. Sounds really fascinating to me in particular, but your story and the true story of extraterrestrial contact sounds great too. Where can people buy these books?
They can certainly go to Amazon.com or Amazon.ca and look me up under Wes G. Roberts. And certainly for the two of you, if you surreptitiously send me an email, I can probably get some books to you, physical ones.
Well,
thank
we
you.
would
I'd be happy to do so.
Oh, thank you so much. It'd be great.
We don't mind paying for them. That'd be great.
Yeah.
I really would like to read them.
Sure.
I'm interested in your experiences. They sound like you have a wide range of them, and having the magician's background, to me, I find that fascinating because, again, we see correlations through all of this, psychic phenomena,
absolutely,
sorcery, what have you. There's alien abductions, or the haunted child in the cemetery. Those sort of things. I think there are tie-ins and correlations, and we truly do want to know the hows and whys. So this has been a fascinating discussion.
Yes. Thank you again.
Give you the rest of your Saturday to enjoy up there in beautiful Canada. And we love Canada. We have a lot of Canadian friends. A lot going on. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you both, Chris and Kristen. I really love this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to take you out of the stream. We'll say our goodbyes and we'll be right back. And I hope you guys enjoyed that. It was a pleasure to talk to Wes.
Absolutely.
We'll be back next Thursday. Dr. Michael Lynch will be joining us on the Dark Horse Paranormal Podcast. And we got all kinds of good stuff coming up.
Yeah, we do.
And we'll tell you more about as the summer progresses and actually gets here, right?
Yeah.
I think
I
are
think
we
it
late
is.
spring?
I have no idea.
I think we're late spring.
I don't know what happened to the transition here, but good
It
Lord.
feels like midsummer.
I know
right
a
now.
wish, but I'm melting.
We're sweating profusely on
It's really
camera.
bad. The window's open. That's what you can see is the curtains.
I want to thank you guys.
Thank you,
We
Greg.
love you all. Thank you, Greg and Anne-Marie and Nina and everybody who joined today. Natalie, you guys are great. Thank you so much. And we'll see you this coming week. We'll see you Thursday and next Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.